What's up, Vetters? Patrick here with Vetted. I have a doozy of a video for y'all today. Jay Anderson from Project Unity recently went on Jesse Michels' podcast to talk UFOs and many other things. And they were also joined by comedian Kurt Metzger, who made things, let's just say, interesting.
Well, that's another thing is the influence of Scientology in the UFO community, because there's a big presence of like that
CIA
belief
cutout,
system.
friend.
Exactly.
How big do you think it is?
Scientology is the CIA.
How big do I think it is?
Yeah, how big do you think?
Well, I mean, like, you know, they infiltrated the CIA and a few different agencies.
infiltrated the
Operation
IRS.
Snow White. Yeah, exactly.
what is it?
Multi-agency infiltration.
Kurt, shut up for a
Multi-agency infiltration.
What's
My wisdom has been
cool, bro.
overflowing today.
It's cool.
It is.
Jesse telling him to just shut up. It's like, that was a lot of the interview, to be honest with you. At times, it made it actually pretty hard to listen to. And let me just state, I'm a huge fan of Kurt Metzger's comedy. And in fact, I love his outfit that he showed up with. He looks like he got Freaky Friday'd with a 6-year-old boy.
You look so ridiculous.
Well, listen.
If you wanted to stigmatize all the
Kurt
shit
Metzger,
you're
everybody.
saying.
No, I want to make it clear. Listen, I'll make it clear. I'm not a journalist. I'm not in the space.
But you kind of are. Well, Kurt has a crazy story. We will get back to.
No, it's cool.
No,
like,
dude,
we're doing a survey
you
level.
know some shit. I'm
like I
happy.
said, like
Yeah,
I'm
So, by the
fully
way-
pumped to have Kurt here. I
Well,
love this guy,
you know,
so,
Kurt
like,
doesn't remember part of his childhood because he was in the gifted and talented education program.
Dude, it's just smart kid classes. It's fine. And now I know a lot of esoteric stuff. It's not a
Oh,
big
you
deal.
were in the same. Well, they're
Well, do you think
teaching you
that-
remote viewing and all that kind of stuff.
I have no idea. I don't remember a single part of it.
Damn,
My
bro.
brother and sister in it. I asked my mom to like.
And now he's super
From
deep.
what
on
ages? From what ages?
I don't know.
No, but they don't. Your parents didn't tell you.
My mom don't remember. If your parents, they go, hey, your son's got high IQ and you're going to be gifted and talented, you think your parents give a fucking shit? They don't. They're like, whoa.
Where'd you grow
Everybody's
up?
conditioned for a pat on the head in this society. That's the occult prison that you live in. So you go, oh, I'm an expert. Yeah.
Now, don't worry, because there is a fascinating story that gets told in this interview with Jay Anderson. In fact, many different parts. I do highly recommend watching this interview. But there's one part in particular that we're going to focus on from this interview, and it has to do with a previous interview that Jay Anderson did that Jesse Michels brought up.
Probably the craziest interview ever done in UFO space. Not done by me, Ross Coulthart. You, I don't know if you know what I'm about to say.
I have a feeling.
Bobby Ray Inman, who was
Highest level dude I've ever spoken to in my life.
highest
Kind of
level
terrifying.
dude anybody
Kind of terrifying.
can ever speak to. And they're like, that guy ran the government.
Now, before we get to the main part of the video, there were a couple other clips from the video that I wanted to highlight, such as this.
Kurt,
The goal laid out when they invented kindergarten.
who hurt you, bro?
Literally the entire system I'm in.
It
Yeah.
sounds like something real
It
happened.
sounds
I went
like
to
it sounds like a
kindergarten.
beef.
Sorry, that wasn't it. This is it.
So I was watching the Charles Hall Tall Whites documentary.
I just interviewed him.
He's
Oh, yeah?
alive.
Yeah, he's
I have a lot
alive.
of questions for him. But it's
He's
fascinating.
a trip.
A couple of the guys that were with me who had seen them thought that they were ancient Egyptians who had somehow or another gotten into Indian Springs Valley and trapped there, and were still using their own hieroglyphics.
Who thought that?
A couple of the other range men, yeah.
So Jesse has an interview coming out with Charles Hall, and if you're not familiar with his story, well, you should, because it is quite a fascinating story. And I'm not going to dive into that in this, but I just wanted you to know that that interview is coming later from Jesse. And one more part.
I don't care about your production and all that other bullshit. I already feel that's a layer of occult between me and what I want to know.
Right.
Sure.
So and Dan's productions are low. He's holding up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
very
makes
basic.
me trust him more. You know
I
what
hear
makes me
you.
trust
Yeah,
people
I
less?
hear you. Yeah.
Makes-
Good production.
Right.
That makes
right.
total sense.
Kurt's comments about the production level of shows such as mine and podcasts and whatnot was kind of funny, considering he's on Jesse Michels' show, which is highly produced in a great way. I find it to be quite enjoyable. It makes it easy to digest, right? There's nothing wrong with, quote, plating the food nicely, right? I can just throw slop on a table, or I can plate it for you nicely, because you see, you eat with your eyes as well, and you clearly enjoy entertainment with your eyes, so there's nothing wrong with good production. But I think maybe his bigger point was that the production doesn't equal the validity of what's being talked about, and in that case, I do agree with Kurt. Now, before we jump to this main part, I do want to say, please, vetters, hit that like button. That really helps out the videos. And, of course, if you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button. I'm trying to get to 100,000 subscribers before the end of the year. Now, let's get to the main focus of today's video, because I've actually done quite a bit of research on what they're talking about, which is Jay Anderson's interview with General Bobby Ray Inman.
Probably the craziest interview ever done in UFO space, not done by me, Ross Coulthart. I don't know if you know what I'm about to say.
I have a feeling.
Bobby Ray Inman, who was
Highest level dude I've ever spoken to in my life.
highest
Kind of
level
terrifying.
dude anybody
Terrifying.
can ever speak to, and they're like, that guy ran the government.
I
For
have no idea
years.
why he agreed to do an interview.
That
with me.
was remarkable. So he was head of the NSA.
He was head of NSA. He was
Deputy
head
director of the CIA.
Yeah, CIA,
Two-
DIA. I think the
Federal Reserve Branch in Dallas.
yeah,
or something.
SAIC.
SAIC.
Yeah,
he was
like,
at SAIC. on
he was
board.
the head of everything.
Of
man.
everything.
Like, like the head honcho.
If there is a legacy UFO program, that
Bro
guy
knows
has a
it.
finger.
Like, dude is like,
all over.
well, yeah, like one of my guys is like a veteran in the U.S. Navy. Was like, he's definitely like MJ-12. Like, he's,
Yeah, he has to. If there is an MJ-12,
if there's an MJ-12, this
that guy's
motherfucker
on
right there
it.
is an
That's right.
MJ-12, right?
And I love the interview. The whole thing's hilarious because like you're doing this like autobiographical thing for the first like
you can tell
45
I'm warming
minutes.
him up, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then at the end you go, so
Tell me about the aliens.
yeah. You go, this UFO researcher Bob Oxler called you.
Yeah, well, in fairness, we absolutely smoothed it out afterwards, but
Yeah.
he did feel a little bit like he was brought in under false pretense. Which
Okay.
When I was doing some background research on you, I came across a fascinating little segment from a documentary. It was a segment of an interview that you had in 1989 with a man called Bob Exler. Do you remember speaking to a man called Bob Exler?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, and during this conversation, he asked you whether you believed that the recovered vehicles would ever be made available for technical research outside of the military circles. And your response to this was, 10 years ago I would have said no, but whether time has evolved and they're beginning to become more open on it, it's a possibility. So obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, but it just seems like you're suggesting here that you're aware of retrieved UFOs being studied by the military.
No, the answer was no. I would not. We're not. Absolutely, we're no retrieved UFOs. I have high confidence.
Now, I went to Jay's channel and I found this interview, and I found a longer answer actually that he gave to this question, and it is still fascinating. So take a look.
No, the answer was no. I would not. We're not. Absolutely, we're no retrieved UFOs. I have high confidence.
A close confidant of George Bush and a man well acquainted with Area 51 was Admiral Bob Inman. His credentials are impeccable. He was director of both Naval Intelligence and the National Security Agency, as well as deputy director of the Defense Intelligence Agency and the CIA. In a telephone conversation with Bob Exler in 1989, he referred to recovered vehicles becoming available for research.
Do you anticipate that any of the recovered vehicles would ever become available for technological research outside of the military circles?
Again, I honestly don't know. 10 years ago, the answer would have been no.
Yeah.
Whether as time has evolved, they're beginning to become more open on it, is a possibility.
It seems like you're suggesting here that you're aware of retrieved UFOs being studied by the military.
No, the answer was no. I would not. We're not. Absolutely, we're no retrieved UFOs. I have high confidence that was not the case. My speculation was simply not that there were people already done, but what in the future. That's why remember 89 is when I began my JPL time. And my much deeper engagement in unmanned research of other planets in the system. Voyager, which has now already gone out into interstellar space, the two Voyager satellites. The very thorough look at Saturn and Jupiter and others. So I'm much more confident now than I would have been in 89 that there are not other entities within our galaxy that could provide extraterrestrial research.
Now, I'll put a link in the description to Jay's full interview on his own channel so you can check that out with Bobby Ray Inman. But now let's get back to Jesse and Jay talking about this interview.
I told him that I wanted to talk about UFOs, but and again, the way that came about was another buddy of mine who was a U.S. Navy veteran had an old number for him. And so we called that number and it went straight to voicemail. And so we left a voice message just saying, well, he left a voice message because it's easier for someone like that who's obviously got connection to him to speak on my behalf and just say, like, there's this guy who's really interested in talking to you. And basically like a week went by and we had nothing. And then my buddy was like, hey, he's messaged back. And it turns out that this phone number we had for him was an old phone that was like locked in a drawer. He just decided to check it on a whim. He hadn't checked it in years.
No way.
Yeah, I know, right? And he saw this voice message and decided to respond.
That's a crazy synchronicity.
That's why at that point I was like, this man's gonna say the truth. Like, you know,
Right.
this feels like it's
Meant to be.
aligned. Like this is meant to be. Like this is crazy. So I was like, you know, he was the only guest who asked, and it doesn't surprise me for a pre-approved list of questions and talking points. Like, what are we gonna go through? So I was like, you know, obviously I need to mention the fact that I want to talk about UFOs, but I started off with obviously like, you know, like his career background and geopolitics and national security of today and what he sees. And then, you know, at the bottom, I was like, and I want to bring up the, you know, 2017 UAP discussion and everything like that.
Yeah.
So I did say that, but I don't think he was expecting me to know about Bob Exler and actually have receipts and be ready to kind of come at him with like, you know, challenges. And I have to say that, you know, with all due respect to the Admiral, you can see the body language shift quite profoundly when we move on to UFOs.
Oh, yeah.
You can see he's relaxed, he's talking, he's enjoying kind of reflecting on his career and everything, which is an incredible career. I mean, my God, this guy is just like, you know, up at the absolute apex.
Mm-hmm.
But then once we get into UFOs, even when I'm just asking the question, man, he starts getting tight. He starts bringing his body in. And when I asked him that first question, he was just like, no, absolutely not. No UFOs, none at all. Like, no way.
Here's a clip of Jay from his own interview with Bobby Ray Inman asking him that very first question about UFOs. See if you can spot the uncomfortableness that comes from the general.
In my years active service, I became intrigued by the whole issue of UFOs. And as I dug into it, I found there were plausible explanations for virtually everything that we had observed.
And then a few times during the interview, which I think must have been him misspeaking, but it was kind of strange, where he kept saying, I am extremely confident that there is no other life in our galaxy.
I have a high level of confidence that within our galaxy, there is no other living life.
And I was like, you know, solar system would make sense, but he said galaxy like 3 times.
How can you be confident?
And also at the end of this, he said something along the lines of, I don't think I've given you what you were looking for, but I hope you'll listen very carefully to what I've said to you. So I have listened back and I'm trying to figure out what it was that you might have been like critically putting in, but this whole thing where it was like, there's no life in the galaxy. It's like,
we should send our audience off now to decode this interview.
Right.
The message Jay, if you find any sort of meta messages.
Yeah, because I'm fascinated in what he was trying to say. I feel like he was trying to put something down that I haven't picked up yet, so...
Well, I did that, and I looked into it, and I watched it, and I definitely, other people should do it. I did find a couple interesting things, but nothing really stuck out. But, you know, I'm not a professional code breaker here. Who do I look like? Benedict Cumberbatch? But there are a couple interesting parts to the interview. Especially this part.
Did you ever cross paths with Ben Rich, the former director of Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, during your career?
No, I did not.
Yeah, because he made some interesting statements over the years. One of them, interestingly enough, was at a 1993 alumni speech at UCLA, where he was quoted to have said the following: "We already have the means to travel among the stars, but these technologies are locked up in black projects, and it would take an act of God to ever get them out to benefit humanity. Anything you can imagine, we already know how to do." And that's coming from a director of the Skunk Works.
Yeah. And what he's referring back to in those days with the SR-71.
Well, really? He said traveling among the stars.
Flying already flying at 2.5 times the speed of sound. While we were saying that building a supersonic aircraft would be too difficult to undertake, and we couldn't do that. So that was the technology that was classified in the Black program.
So he's ever crossed paths with Ben Rich from Lockheed Martin, but somehow he knows what he meant by that quote, right? It seems a little odd to me. I think there's more there to unravel. And he also said this, which was very telling and very fascinating. Does it mean something more? Possibly.
There was one of the videos down near the White Sands area along the Texas-Mexico border that I simply speculated, said, if I didn't know better, I would have thought you actually captured an image of a stealth missile being tested in the process. And I got a call from the Air Force asking me not to speculate on test sites.
I think what it tells me is that clearly if he speculates about things, he can get calls to basically, hey, stop speculating about things, right? So he can have his narrative sort of changed or pushed or adjusted, might be the best word. So how do we know that what he's saying in this interview hasn't been, quote, adjusted?
Yeah,
who knows?
Well, that
was wild. Yeah,
so wild, so wild. But the Bob Oxler call is so just crazy and interesting because you hear Bobby Ray Inman say, like, maybe at some point this will come out,
like,
but
not
now.
Or
Or
like,
and he's speaking so casually.
Yeah,
like
and there's a few like news clips of Exler going on the news and saying like, someone said to him, do you think that this could just be fraudulent and fake? And he's like, well, Admiral Bobby Ray Inman convinced me that these were flying saucers from an alien species, so I'm pretty okay with that. And it's just like, well, damn, man, like he's like reiterating this over and over. A few people have said that it was maybe, misquoted from that documentary where you've got the recording, but here's Exler on the news a few different times reiterating that Admiral Inman made him like absolutely confident and positive. So.
And Oxler seemed markedly more reasonable than a lot of UFO researchers. Like he himself was an aerospace engineer.
Yeah, he was a
worked at
NASA guy. He was
AT&T.
a NASA specialist, I think, at some point in his life. And again, very calm-spoken, intellectual guy that was just being very matter-of-fact with it and just saying, well, no, I mean, from where I'm seeing, the Admiral essentially has convinced me that these are recovered vehicles that we're working on and,
And there's no way that you could be mistaken and it could have been an airplane, helicopter, or something of that nature?
Well, Admiral Inman convinced me that these vehicles were not manufactured by human technology, so that's pretty conclusive for me.
Now, I'll put a link in the description to the full interview with Jay Anderson and Jesse Michels. And coincidentally, I actually did my own interview with Jay Anderson not too long ago about the discoveries at the Giza Plateau under the pyramids, right? The big structures underneath. So I'll put a link to that as well if you want to watch that. And I guess I could break this here. Jesse, has agreed to come on the podcast, vetted here. So I'm going to try to set that up, but he's busy. I'm busy. So I don't know when that's going to happen, but hopefully we can make it happen fairly soon. Now, I do want to leave you with one more interesting part from the Jay Anderson interview that he did with Bobby Inman, right? The good general. And it's quite interesting considering what Jay brought up about Ben Rich and Lockheed Martin. And as you know, Lockheed Martin has been in the news quite a bit, right? With Ross Coulthart and whatnot.
I'm going to leave you with one thought today, Bryce. I now know categorically that the Tic Tac is Lockheed Martin technology. Categorically. Okay. The Tic Tac is Lockheed Martin technology. Why are we being lied to?
Take a look at this clip.
Is it feasible to send drones halfway around the world to do images? Answer is yes.
Right, but
we're not the only country that has that competence.
It's the performance capabilities and the flight characteristics that have been described, I think. I mean, the recent ones that have been coming up through the US government, like the now famous Tic Tac incident, which was it had no flight surfaces, no wings, no exhaust, no air plumes, no sort of signatures to it, and it was making erratic movements in ways that couldn't really be described by our physics.
Go back and compare those evaluations to the ones that were related to the over Phoenix, along the border, all the rest. Phenomena we did not understand, and the observations did not automatically tell you what the answer could be. So there are clear things here to try to understand and explore, and particularly if we're being subjected to surveillance within this planet, for what purpose in the process. But for my JPL time, I remain highly confident that there are no other elements within our galaxy that could be providing those. And I'm very skeptical of interstellar unless it's something out there that's far advanced beyond where the U.S. is technology. I think if it existed, we would have seen other evidence of it by this time. The James Webb will let us know a lot more about this over the next 2 or 3 years.
All right, now it's time to respond to some YouTube comments. Here's the first one. This is from Jesse Michels. He says, Dolan is the GOAT of UFO research. Patrick is the GOAT of daily UFO updates. Let's go, y'all. Thank you, Jesse. I really appreciate the kind words. The GOAT, I'm too humble to admit that. But I do appreciate, the support. Let's put it that way. And look, one like on this comment. Come on, y'all. We need to be supporting Jesse when he comments on the channel. Now, let's move to the second comment. Niles Sweeney, XL5DB, says, be great if you just let your videos play and do you talking after instead of constantly interrupting it. So annoying. It was really hard to just read that comment, but look, that's the channel here. So if that bothers you, I guess you're just going to have to find another channel because the way I do the show is just not going to change. So respectfully, right? But if you're just looking for the clips, we'll go watch them, right? You come to Vetted to hear me break it down and add context clips and break it up and this and that. And, I'm not just trying to, quote, steal people's content like I get accused of sometimes. I have to transform it, which is what I want to do, to give you a whole reason to watch it. Otherwise, you just go watch the clips and you don't need me, right? So anyway, I apologize if that's what you're expecting, but, respectfully, it's not going to change. So, all right, y'all. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Please leave your comments down below. Links in the description as always. We'll see you on the next one, Vetters. Remember, every day's a gift, y'all. Peace.